All right, guys. Good morning, good evening, good night. Another episode of Layer1Live. We're happy to have everybody that's in the chat. We have a lot of stuff to get to today, so we're kind of scrambling to get everything kind of together. We have community giveaways. We got to talk what? We got to talk Dimitri's desk. We got to talk Trading Lounge that we kind of released. We have to make sure that everything's quality. But it's another good week. Let us know in the comments if the volume's okay. That can kind of get messed up early. So let us know. We're happy to have you. What's going on, fellas?
What's up, man? Yeah, we're back in action. I'm at Mike's again. So I'm enjoying these duos here. Definitely a different dynamic, than we had for a while. But yeah, we got lots of exciting things today.
Yeah, had a good had a good weekend. Watched some UFC fights. Lost a bunch of money.
Yep.
So
Got liquidated.
whether it's crypto or elsewhere, just forever buying high, selling low. That's what we like to do.
Are you buying this McGregor retirement?
No.
No.
Really?
Man, he's a money fighter at this point. He said he's retiring before, and then Dana White rolls through with a nice big fat contract, and he's comes out of retirement. But it's kind of a weird situation with the UFC and contracts and everything right now. So I don't envy Dana White's position at this point. But yeah, he's not going to be retiring anytime soon, I don't think.
Gotcha. Well, that's probably a good prediction there. So I'm going to get the stats really quick, but we also have the poll results from the community. We ran kind of a June community poll for the first time. We had some good turnout there that we'll get to. We got a Trading Lounge recap from Dima, as well as picking these Garbage Pail Kid winners. I know that was a huge announcement coming from NFTAlert. We had Rob on the podcast last week, so that was a interesting time. We had a great episode with him, but we will announce those GPK winners just in a sec. We're going to get to the stats really quick. Like I said, we have a ton of stuff, so it's just all over the place. So stats from last week, we have US, UK, Netherlands, Morocco, and Australia. Those are the top five. Interesting, too, that I don't believe it made it onto the top five list up to this point. We got top 3 episodes from last week. That's going to be that episode with Rob at NFTAlert. We had Zach Prince from BlockFi, and that episode with John Woo and Ava Labs is still raking in the views, so that's good. We've got Roll this week that we're going to release on Wednesday, and then the rest of the week is going to be determined. Guys, please stay with us. We are working on getting everything scheduled to your liking. Rest assured there will be an episode at the end of the week. But other than that, Dima, how was that Trading Lounge we ran? What was the Trading Lounge and how did it go?
Yeah. So we kind of talked about this idea of having just a casual hangout, which we've been kind of working on setting up, and I finally was like, all right, it's time to do it. Community kind of requested to have like a hangout session where we can bring some of the community members in and have them talk in Discord with us. And the setup was, basically I had the price action chart so we can take a look at the volatility that, happens as CME opens and as we open the new week trading for Bitcoin and just crypto in general. It was pretty chill, Karen joined us, so we had some discussions there. We'll see how it's going to go, but I want to continue to improve it because essentially having just the charts and price action when things are not really moving that much, might be kind of stale. So I want to have maybe, more people more interacting, discussing things, and then also have like the news feed so we can see the news coming in and maybe talk about certain things that come up. But it's more casual, relax, with some music in the background, kick it back,
little hookah, kind of
exactly, yeah,
sitting on some pillows.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good Kieran's in the chat saying it was like a Layer 1 hangout. That was a good time, man. I joined you for a little bit. I know I kind of left you guys to your date there for a second, but it was a good time. We're looking to do kind of exclusive content on the side of what we're already doing with our basically like 3 main forms of content, which is the interviews, Layer1Live like today, and Dimitri's desk. So on the side, we're going to do that type of exclusive content for you guys and see how everything works. So yeah, let's get to the poll results real quick. We ran a community poll in our private Telegram group. We had 26% of the group come out, so that's pretty good. I mean, we definitely hope for more, and we'll continue to kind of improve that process. But a couple of the questions we had in there, let's get to it really quick. What's your favorite Layer 1 content? What do we think, boys? What do you think the responses were?
Come on, man, hands down.
I'm gonna go Layer1Live.
87% said Layer1Live was their favorite content. So Dimitri, tough one there. We said,
Was there any votes for Dimitri's desk?
There was one vote for Dimitri's desk.
That was me.
So we had what tokens, networks, topics do you want to talk about more on the channel? We have, and I'll go in order here: DApp, DeFi, ETH DeFi, EOS adoption, staking coins, Ethereum projects, and ETH 2.0, as well as blockchain games and NFTs. Also had some responses here. What do you think should be added to improve Layer 1? The answers in a row were more engagement, talk about crypto US and international regulations on adoption, Layer 1 hangout, I wonder who that was, passive income with crypto, can't think of something but Dimitri's desk is the best. And
here we go.
Another content that really said that, he loves all, or he or she said they loved all the variety of content. So we're going to continue rolling out those polls, guys. We really like, obviously your responses, and that helps us get, better content to you guys, as well as kind of make the community better. We also had a couple other, a second part of that poll, and one of the main questions that I had, and it's been something that I've been trying to push to everyone here, as well as like the community, is what we should be naming the Telegram group, if you want, our community. If you say, you got XRP Army, you got the Link Marines, we need to know what Layer1Live, what our group, what our tribe is going to be called. Tribe's a cool name that I was kind of like pushing, but we need to know what we're going to call the Layer 1 community. We'll let that go for another week. We'll see what we want to name the Layer 1 community. One that came in was the Layer 1 Bulls. I kind of like that.
Dimitri's desk bears.
And also the Elizabeth Arkham Asylum for this criminally insane is probably one we're going to pass on for now. But that was a good entry. So that was basically the poll. We'll get the winner announced midway through the show. That we said, the entries into that poll entered you into a $25 BTC giveaway. So that was pretty much that. And I'll get to the garbage pail winners. Basically, everyone that left a comment on that YouTube channel or that YouTube show that we had with NFTAlert and Rob Finch is going to get one GPK card. The way it worked out was we were going to give 10 to the commenters on the YouTube channel, as well as 10 in our private group, but we don't want to give too many to our private group, more than one. So what we're going to be doing is spreading that out amongst everybody. I think the guys in the private group are actually going to get 2. That's just the way it works. So 2 guys in our private community are getting splitting 4 GPK cards, and everyone else that commented on the channel that's kind of in the broader community outside that tribe or whatever we end up calling it, the Bulls, are going to split 16, so evenly. So everybody, you 16 commenters, are going to get 1 GPK card each, and that is the GPK card giveaway. Thank you to Rob Finch. Thank you to NFTAlert for that, as well as everybody that commented along, man. I know that was a huge kind of Layer 1 update. We got a lot to get through.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else there you want to move into breaking?
Yeah, we can definitely move.
Coinbase.
Yeah, we can definitely move into breaking. Mike, if you want to help me out on the breaking news a little bit here as I go through it, but I kind of just like had a brain dump there with all our community news. But basically, Coinbase is going to, or I guess the block came through and is saying that Coinbase is looking to sell data via Coinbase Analytics to the IRS and DEA. So those awards haven't been given out to the IRS and DEA from Coinbase or Coinbase Analytics, but it looks like, based on some records filed back in May, that Coinbase Analytics might be gearing up to sell data. Now, Coinbase actually came out and said Coinbase Analytics is an entirely separate portion of the company, so it doesn't necessarily reflect, I guess, like user info on Coinbase, but obviously the community is a little bit concerned. It does have that Coinbase moniker attached to Coinbase Analytics, so people are rightfully concerned with what data Coinbase and Coinbase Analytics is going to sell the IRS and DEA. But it is good to point out that this hasn't been awarded to either entities yet.
Yeah, and as some further context on this, about a year or so ago, Coinbase bought a company called Neutrino, which it turned out at the time had a ton of kind of bad press associated with it because they had like some hackers and kind of were doing things for the government in a lot of ways, as far as I know. So there was kind of this big fallout, and everybody was like, why are you buying this intelligence firm Neutrino? It's so bad for the crypto space, and these aren't good actors by any means from a privacy standpoint. So Coinbase, basically said, hey, while we've acquired Neutrino, the company is going to be no more. We're just kind of absorbing them into Coinbase, and we're going to get rid of those bad actors that were associated with Neutrino. And, obviously fast forward to today, I think part of what Coinbase is kind of hoping is that, people have forgotten about that, incident, and that they can rebrand under Coinbase Analytics versus Neutrino and some of the issues they had there. This is kind of interesting to me for two reasons. One, in the article, someone from the Coinbase analytics team, I think it is, or maybe it's from the DEA and IRS, talking about how there's this tool essentially that Coinbase Analytics uses, which, as reading here, provides investigators with identity attribution and de-anonymity's virtual currency addresses domestically and internationally. So basically what this is saying is that Coinbase Analytics, be it via Neutrino or created in-house, has some sort of tool that very quickly and easily allows them to understand who is sending virtual currency or who is receiving it, which, if you kind of fast forward out into where this could go, it becomes a real problem for privacy around using Bitcoin or Ethereum or kind of other, really non-privacy focused coins. So that's the first kind of concern here. And I think one that obviously most people had when this announcement came out. The second interesting one to me is that by branding this under Coinbase, they're really, to me, taking another step towards the Coinbase brand being one that users or investors associate with like the clean cryptocurrency exchange, right? Like Gemini did this last year, I think it was, when they came out with all this marketing around consensus about how like, hey, we are the regulated cryptocurrency exchange, right? Like we're the clean one here. There's no dirty money. We're not, washing trades or anything like that. You can kind of trust us. And currently it's a tough pitch because so much of crypto is, very anarchist and anti-establishment, anti-government. So your customers today, be they big time into crypto or not, or don't really kind of go towards that, I would think, right? It's not super attractive to them, but maybe Coinbase sees down the road their ability to differentiate themselves. It's like, hey, we're working with authorities, right? We're not a dirty exchange or whatever you want to call it. Whether or not that works out, whether or not that's actually kind of their plan for the brand, who knows? But otherwise, I don't know why you would associate Coinbase with, a company that's obviously going to get so much heat in the crypto community today.
Yeah, it's interesting to like also point out that they have a hand in DeFi space as well, right? So it's like they have this clean setup, right? But they also have the hand in their cookie jar for the DeFi. So and just in general, like back in the day, when Coinbase was reporting saying, hey, we're going to report to IRS if there's like, transactions of 10,000 or more, right? So
they're already doing that for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So that has been happening already. So like this stuff is like, oh, okay, well, it kind of saw that coming, like something where they just, increased that. Also, it's interesting that I've heard some rumors that, first of all, the Cash App, right, that we're all aware of, I was trying to go through their KYC process. Man, that KYC process is intense. It's like, it takes a while to KYC. They ask you so many questions there. But the rumor is essentially that if you transfer Bitcoin from your Cash App into like Deribit or some of these other platforms, those platforms will lock your account.
Oh.
Yeah, which is crazy. So
like marked bills.
Yeah, exactly. So
Interesting.
Yeah. The biggest thing I took from this breaking news is the amount that Coinbase is potentially getting paid by the IRS and the DEA. I think it was said over 10,000, but not exceeding 250,000. And that seems like a really small amount of money to take the reputation hit that Coinbase would and lose a lot of, I'm assuming a lot of volume from users that rightfully so are not comfortable with, storing funds in the Coinbase exchange, Coinbase wallet, what have you. So
I don't know how much of a choice they had, in terms of not cooperating too, so
that's fair.
Part of the game is building relationships with regulators, I would think, for sure. I mean, I get that. There was a great kind of meme that happened on Twitter where, you saw the tweet from the block with this article, and then like slowly up the timeline, you saw a whale alert tweet that was like something like 6,000 Bitcoin moved from Coinbase to wallet, which I thought was pretty great. You're always crypto Twitter is always good for those.
Crypto Twitter, even in the dark state that it is now, it's still good. For some good info and good memes. But I did want to shout out the two guys who were in the Layer 1 community chat that did put out the Wax accounts. That was Kieran and Brandon. So before we moved on, I wanted to make sure to touch on that. It looks like what we have today, guys, is breaking news, discussion, Bitcoin, Ethereum, EOS, and then DeFi. So if you're following along, that column will show you there. But we're going to move into quick news before we hit discussion, and then we'll likely be doing that $25 BTC giveaway here shortly. So we'll hit breaking news or quick news now.
Yeah, so I've got the first two stories here. The first one is that Robinhood users are supposedly buying a ton of US-based blockchain ETFs. So these are, ETFs that have structured some sort of investment into blockchain in some way, and thus we're able to get it passed and able to offer it to investors on the Robinhood app. So just be clear, this isn't like specifically a Bitcoin ETF. These are other kind of ETFs that are invested in blockchain companies or crypto companies. In a lot of cases, the three here in particular are BLCN, BLOK, and LEGR. But the story is essentially that there are a ton of users piling into this. Each one is up anywhere from about 6 to 9%, I think. This is very kind of reminiscent of what we're seeing from like Grayscale and some of the other, more publicly listed opportunities when it comes to blockchain and crypto, which, as far as Grayscale goes, we'll talk about here in a little bit. My only concern is that people are investing in this thinking that like they have direct exposure to Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin goes up by 50% and their ETF is up by like 5%. And they're like, what the hell? I should have just gone to Coinbase and, let them sell my data or whatever for all those gains. But, it's just, it's one of those stories kind of showing general sentiment towards crypto and blockchain. It's obviously super high right now, I think, considered with kind of the money printer meme going and all these different things. So just another example of crypto and blockchain being loved by your 20 or 30 somethings who are using Robinhood. Next story here is from China, from Tencent. So Tencent is this giant Chinese tech company. They have formed an alliance to promote blockchain development. We're seeing this all throughout China, whether it's kind of more on the quote unquote private side or it's more on the governmental side. The company has said that over the next 5 years, they're already going to invest $70 billion into technology infrastructure, which is not solely blockchain, but does include blockchain. They've done some other things like launch a blockchain accelerator. And then obviously there's a giant, national kind of, move towards blockchain technology and using blockchain technology for all of its benefits. So this alliance will really focus on 3 committees: standards, technical, and business ecosystems. There seems to be a lot of folks kind of moving towards what they're calling blockchain standards or crypto standards. I think IBM and Microsoft were working on something domestically as well. So, just kind of more money being thrown at the space there from China.
Nice. I got the next 2 pieces of news. And the first one I got is coming out from Russia. There's a couple entrepreneurs that figure out a way to get cheap electricity, per se, right? So the headline basically saying illegal miners in Russia stole 6.6 million worth of electricity, power grid firm says. So the article goes into basically discussing how certain so in order to get access to electrical power grids, you have to have special license, like factories have that stuff and so on. But some businessmen that own factories get approached, and they get a special deal from some of these guys where like, hey, listen, we're gonna pay you a little bit so we can hook up, through your factory and get some of this electricity. And they would set up these mining rigs that are like ridiculously like in the ground in the forest, and it's like set up so they would get, they would steal essentially electricity from the power grids that are owned obviously by the government, they also tempered with the fact that like how much electricity was being used as well, like as they're taking that electricity, which kind of reminds me of kind of how things were back in the day when I was in Ukraine. The Slovak people, the Ukrainian people, they're very clever when it comes to designing certain things that temper with electricity consumption. There was a thing back in the day in Ukraine where some people in their homes, what they would do, they would get this device, to engineer this device that has to do with like magnets and stuff like that. But basically the way it works is you plug that into the electric, like
The meter.
power supply, and the meter would go the other way.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, that's the first thing that came to my mind as I read this article, how this stuff occurred in the, with the mining and so on. Right. Obviously, if you found guilty of that, there's huge, you just go straight to gulag. But that's what has been kind of happening on that front with Russian, some of the Russian miners taking advantage of that. The next piece of news that I got is so CoinMarketCap, after the acquisition, is not, is hitting some roadblocks as far as the community goes, because they came out with the rankings that have been heavily criticized, and they have like BitMEX on the 175th spot as far as the rankings go, and they judge by like the web traffic and like the liquidity, which puts like liquidity for BitMEX at 0, and like Bybit and a couple other exchanges. Obviously, we know the number one exchange on that ranking. I don't have to even tell you which one it is. But there's a lot of people on like Twitter talking about how, hey, this is bogus, like this is ridiculous, like how you guys gonna have these rankings when like it doesn't make any sense. And Binance kind of came out and saying, hey, listen, well, the way it's calculated is based on the spot volume, that like to base the liquidity, since it's a derivatives exchange, there's really no spot, blah blah blah. So that's why the ranking is set up that way. But we're working on not fixing, but introducing the liquidity measurement for derivatives exchanges, which is funny because FTX is ranking 74th, which is like, come on, man,
They're like the 5th largest exchange.
Yeah, for derivatives, it's like, so there's a lot of criticism about the rankings. And right off the bat, when they first introduced this, I remember I talked about it, how I was like, dude, come on, like this is ridiculous. Like, if you guys don't have like a complete product that's gonna give a legitimate ranking system, like why do this halfway and then anger the community,
right,
to do it this way? So
test it at first,
yeah,
before
exactly,
rolling it out and saying Binance is the best across the board. Like, what do you expect?
So I've got some piece of Binance news here for my quick news. The Brave browser CEO is apologizing for automatically adding affiliate links to cryptocurrency URLs. So specifically with Binance, I guess a user had typed in manually a URL, binance.us, and what happened then was that he got hit with a Brave referral link. Which happens throughout the Brave browser. Throughout the Brave browser's kind of interface at different times. But obviously, the situation here is that the user actually typed it in manually and got that referral code. I know we've talked on this channel that the Brave browser obviously has integrated Binance widgets. So when you have a Binance widget associated and you maybe click into Binance, you should probably get a referral code. Certainly, Brave is like a profit, a private company. They need to have income, and referral codes are essentially a way for companies to get this type of income, especially when they're working at a clip of, I believe, 15 million monthly average users or something like that. That was reported sometime last week. But the situation here is that the Brave browser Brave CEO is apologizing because basically when a user is typing in a manual URL, they should not be hit with that referral code, right? So that is the situation here. They are apologizing, but it is interesting to see this kind of wave of negative news that Binance has been featured with, and this might not be their fault, but it is a kind of fishy situation that has gone on. But that is the quick piece of news there. I believe the last part I'll leave you with is a actual tweet from the CEO, Brendan Eich. The autocomplete default was inspired by a search query client ID attribution that all browsers do. But unlike keyword queries, a typed in URL should go to the domain named without any additions. Sorry for this mistake. We are clearly not perfect, but we correct course quickly. So I think Brave has a little bit more respect in the community and has a reputation in the community. So I think this was a minor slip up and not something that they were doing maliciously to their users. But all the best to Brave there. Quick note, we've been talking about Reddit a lot on this podcast as well, especially since they released their community points, which is like kind of an alpha version of a cryptocurrency that users within Reddit can use, specifically on the subreddits cryptocurrency and Fortnite. So we've been really liking what's coming out of the Reddit community, but it looks like one of the main guys within Reddit, a co-founder essentially, Alexis Ohanian, is actually stepping down from his posts in kind of a political statement as it pertains to kind of the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on in the U.S. right now. Alexis Ohanian is obviously married to Serena Williams as well. That's definitely important to point out. But it looks like he's stepping down from the executive position within the Reddit board and is urging that board to hire a person of color, specifically an African American. So I think they went on to talk about kind of percentages within S&P 500 companies of black members being on that board. It's a fairly low number. So this is a political statement, but as far as it kind of pertains to cryptocurrency, Alexis Ohanian obviously is a co-founder of Initialized Capital as well, and they've put money into different blockchain initiatives and different companies and things like that. So it will be interesting to see how Alexis leaving Reddit, or at least off the board of Reddit, kind of pertains to the cryptocurrency initiative that they've been running via their community points. So just wanted to point that out, but that's pretty much the quick news there. Did you guys have any comments on Reddit or Brave?
No, I mean, Brave wise, keep throwing me my bat tokens, man, and I'm happy pretty much. That's what I use it for anyway. And obviously the ad blockers and stuff. I mean, props to Alexis on that. That was a quick decision that he made, and I'm sure he's going to do a lot of things when it comes to fighting a lot of these racial injustices that we see. So props to him for rock and rolling on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to Dima. Did you have anything? I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not really mad about the Brave thing. It was pretty clever. Like, why would you care if they're if you're using their ref link? I mean, you helping Brave, right? It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess when you type in a manual URL, you want to be taken exactly to the point that you're typing in. But I enjoy that point too. So I do want to get to a lot of these comments. We really didn't hit any of the comments as we kind of came in. So this is our first chance to get to it. Radster's in the chat. Kieran's in the chat. Bantano is in the chat. I got who else in here? Persian Gulf. So Persian Gulf saying greetings from Iran. So you're probably one of our first listeners from Iran. So Persian Gulf, nice to see you in here. Bountano's talking about the GPK giveaway. He said, thanks guys. I just found out. I just found you, so don't know yet what to do so far. I think we went over the GPK giveaway right after that comment, but essentially people that are following along, please go ahead and chat. If you're not a member of the Layer 1 community already, we like to have you guys communicate while we're doing Layer 1 Live, and certainly you guys are starting off doing so. I think we peaked so far at 17. We're at now 15, so appreciate you guys following along. Looks like Scott is just joining us as well, so appreciate all you guys leaving comments. We will get to the discussion portion now. Dima's texting. What quick news you getting to, dude?
I think he's on Tinder.
Yeah, you gotta strike
Hey,
the
the
iron when it's hot.
quarantine's lifted, man.
Yeah, exactly. No, I had one of my friends that was messaging me about Grayscale. So I was like, hey, my man, why don't you just tune in right now? We're about to talk about it. So, yeah, anyway, so getting into discussion piece. So this one, it's pretty interesting. I saw this headline basically saying that the Chinese investors are getting into the housing market aggressively, specifically in Asia. So they're calling it the Chinese buyers are kickstarting a generational housing market rally, and Bitcoin may be next. And it basically talks about the Chinese investors that are securing real estate in like Singapore, Australia, Philippines, South Korea, and so on. So the overall demand for real estate and properties is going up, which is interesting to think about given where we are as far as the global economy goes, right? And the big kind of question and things that I want to talk about is kind of where we are as far as the risk sentiment goes, because it seems like we were dealing with this pandemic of COVID for some time. The world stopped, and everything shut down, but now kind of the COVID is not making news anymore. Things are starting to open back up. We see stock market rallying. We have actually this week Fed that's going to have FOMC meeting that's going to basically talk about the rates. Are they going to change it or not? Give us an outlook. We're going to have the CPI, which is the inflation measurement for US. So big news week for US. And it also, this article talks about how in general, when you have really low rates, kind of eases up some hardship for those house owners or property owners that have an interest rate that's maybe high, but now it's lower, and now they can not only afford to pay mortgage, but also because of the demand for real estate, their properties going up in value. So that's kind of like a double help on that field. So just in general, where we are now, we're seeing a little bit drop off in gold. We're seeing oil come back up. We're seeing dollar dropping off a little bit, and stock market obviously is rallying. So all of these things, it seems like the world is cheering the risk on environment, and is not necessarily chooses to be in that risk on environment, but they're forced to be in it because of the way things are on a global macro side, where the way the interest rates are and so on. It seems like the market participants are forced into these riskier assets and whatnot, right? And then at the end, they know that the government's, the Fed, is going to be there to alleviate some of that risk, right, from it. So, so how does this relate to Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin has been kind of that hedge for inflation, or, when there's a risk off environment, it's kind of relates a lot to commodity side, where it's with gold rallying, you see Bitcoin rallying. But now it's well, things are looking pretty good. Stock market is up. Things are going up. How's Bitcoin going to do in this environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Bitcoin has started running with the narrative of, hey, here's an alternative to the Fed printing money. And my thought has been since March that we would get these bailouts, which we did, and things would kind of go back to normal. So for me, the question past this point is, how long do people fear inflation, especially as we start to see more and more deflationary things happening? If you look at just the consumer price index, right? The last I looked, it was down almost a full 1%.
Yeah, it's estimated it's forecasted to be down again.
Exactly. So as we're kind of running into this deflationary environment, the fundamental concern around inflation becomes less and less, at least in the short term. Now, fundamentals do not equal price. We know that very, very, very vividly in crypto. It really just kind of comes down to what sort of, bullish fundamental events occur for Bitcoin, and, how many people who don't really kind of understand the arguments around deflation versus inflation just kind of run with the meme and throw some money into it. It's hard to say, right? Like I can see a lot of this money printing being good for Bitcoin because you have that narrative, and anytime you have cash flowing into the market, right, you're going to see, other assets appreciate in value with all that extra Fed money. Whether it's hard to see how that Fed money gets into Bitcoin in a lot of ways, but I think that's just kind of broadly the sentiment you see there. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm not super exposed to Bitcoin right now, personally, just kind of for all these risky, reasons and whatnot, right? It's obviously a crazy time for the world. So it's hard for me to say either way, really.
Right.
Yeah, one of the stories that we have talking about later on is the story about Tether printing probably more in one quarter than they have like in the history of any quarter previously, and it's just like it's interesting to see like that stablecoin narrative alongside what's going on with Bitcoin. So it'll be interesting to see what the appetite is for USD as opposed to BTC across the globe. I guess my only other concern with China, and I guess the story right here is centered around kind of Chinese investors as their economy kind of rolls back up, is how do you foresee the US like Chinese kind of trade war that could potentially work out? How do you foresee that impacting Bitcoin? Is that going to hurt? Is that more of a benefit to the Chinese community, or is it more benefit to the U.S. government as opposed to the Chinese government? What do you see as the kind of tensions rise there? Do you think there will be tensions at all between the two countries as much as they kind of said as COVID was coming out?
Yeah, that's a good question. With the tensions and trade wars and so on, right? We did have a lot of Chinese investors that are buying up real estate in the U.S., right? So maybe some of that capital that used to come to U.S. To buy properties, right, is now pouring into some of these Asian, countries where investors are moving some money around there, especially given kind of the corrections that happen in those real estate markets, due to COVID and so on. I think that's what's happening, where some of the money gets reshuffled, and perhaps maybe Chinese investors are not as aggressively investing in U.S. property as they used to before.
Yeah, that definitely could be. I don't think the trade war affects BTC positively or negatively in any real way. The interesting just kind of piece of context is that this run up from 5K to 10K has been mostly U.S. led from what we've seen, which traditionally has not been the case, right? The U.S. has followed. So it's kind of interesting to see Asia sitting more on the sidelines. Maybe it has to do with the halving and some of the concerns there from a efficiency standpoint. Maybe not, who knows? But the other thing I wanted to mention is that I think there might be an underlying theme in this story, less so alongside crypto or kind of real estate even, and more just Chinese money trying to move money out of China, right? That's always something that continues to happen. And when you have currency restrictions, I think the latest was $50,000 worth or won worth. When you have those restrictions in place, you have to kind of figure out other ways to get your money out. And typically one of the main ways to do that is via some sort of, SPV or investment where you're not necessarily moving cash out to sit it somewhere else in another currency, but you're taking cash that you have in China and investing it in real estate in Australia or the Philippines or elsewhere, right, where those same restrictions don't exist. So, if you, putting $10 million in Australian real estate, you almost care less about whether or not that appreciates, and more just that you can have that cash sitting outside of China in case there's some sort of, terrible event that happens with the Chinese currency. Yeah. So I would bet that it's more that and less like, hey, we see some giant opportunity for real estate right now. So
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's amazing that real estate actually has come up to the front, because I feel like that's like the most like risk off thing or asset that you could possibly be buying when the world is kind of in this crisis mode. The last thing that I would want is something that's as illiquid as real estate. But I'm ceding to you guys on this subject. I guess like one micro event that I would probably like highlight here too is the CCP's kind of takeover of Hong Kong and how that affects like people within Hong Kong itself. Would they want to get their assets into something other than the Chinese yuan and things like that? So it will be interesting to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've got a quick discussion piece. I think we have a comment here, Renee Bois. Your opinion on Grayscale buying BTC big time. So it looks like we'll get to Grayscale here in a second. But before that discussion piece, I kind of wanted to touch on a little pump of wax over the last couple weeks, as we saw them kind of run with the NFT narrative and that they're going to have all these NFTs and all these different companies, like big enterprise companies, kind of come in. Tops was a great example, using GPK and kind of that their release there having success. So my question, I guess, as a discussion piece that we'll get into, is how much wax success feeds back into maybe EOS, which is in that same kind of, I wouldn't even call it the same ecosystem, but kind of the same universe, maybe the same galaxy as we see. Obviously Wax is a sister chain of EOS. It uses that EOS.io tech, but it isn't necessarily that connected to the EOS ecosystem. So I wonder, because that was one of the questions me and Dimitri were talking about, was how Wax's success kind of plays back in it, or does it do that at all? As we see like more parachains kind of come out, I think Polkadot's a great example. Does Edgeware's success being built on top of Polkadot feed into Polkadot, or vice versa? I think it might be more effective for Edgeware to be associated with Polkadot. So kind of an open-ended question here. How do sister chains or parachain success feed back into maybe a main chain, environment?
I would say you'd have to look at it two ways. You'd have to look at it first from a tokenomics standpoint, right? Like, is Wax using EOS in some way where they're pulling EOS off the market? Is Wax doing something that's decreasing the supply of EOS or doing something at the token level that's going to theoretically benefit the price of EOS, which I think is pretty clear. The answer is no on that front. And the second one would be purely from a perception standpoint, right? Is, if Wax succeeds, will traders out there, investors out there say, okay, well, because Wax is doing so well, I think that somehow that's going to help EOS. So I'm going to buy EOS thinking that it's going to appreciate in price, right? And if you have enough of the herd move that way, then, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where EOS ends up moving up because everyone's kind of thinking along that line. I would say for what I know between Wax and EOS in particular, I don't think it has any effect, because as we've said before, Wax is very like anti-EOS. Like, yes, they're a sister chain. They use EOS.io, but they're not like, I think the whole, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Q, but the whole birth of Wax had little to do with like pushing EOS forward and more to do with like, hey, we don't agree with the governance of EOS, so we're going to kind of take this tech and do our own thing. Whereas with Polkadot and Edgeware, right, like when both are very much working together to push each other forward. So if you see, if you see, DOT tokens come out and just completely crush it and do 10x from listing, everyone's going to go, oh, hey, there's something here in this, in Polkadot, and there seems to be a ton of bullish narrative, right? What else is related to Polkadot? Well, Edgeware, right? So hey, Edgeware hasn't pumped yet, so let me buy some Edgeware kind of thing. Because I from a token standpoint, I don't think either of those projects use either token a ton, from kind of that tokenomics side of the coin. So yeah, I mean, I see the point, but I think you'd have to really rely on perception of Wax doing well, for EOS to do well, or vice versa.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Mike. And also it kind of brings up another point where it's like, well, if we have these networks like this, let's say EOS, for example, and yeah, they have an amazing tech and all that stuff. Well, what's, stops somebody from just doing a sister chain, taking that tech and making something of their own where it doesn't relate to EOS at all, right? you know, so
That's wax. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so it's like, well, that can happen on other networks too, right? The ones that are like trying to push and bring in users and so on, right? And they're like zero fees and all that stuff, you know, all this great stuff. But it's like, okay, but you know what? We're just gonna take your tech, create our sister chain here because we actually have like something that's gonna stir up massive growth. But why would we do it, you know, with on your network if there's any question about governance and so on, right?
Right.
I would rather build it my own and so on, right? So it's really tough to kind of make that connection and also, you know, thinking that, hey, look, you know, this tech is just going to be EOS and it's just going to be there when it's all open source and, you know, available for grabs and to be set up on, you know, for different purposes. So
right.
Yeah, I think the way that you kind of separated your answer with those either way that it kind of affects the token, the EOS token, and how it kind of goes back in. Obviously, there's no connection of I need to buy EOS to get into Wax.
Right.
Although I think there's an argument to be made there because you actually have to. I would have to go on Nudex. So the main volume source of Wax being traded is on Nudex. So to your perception argument, I kind of see someone that needs to buy Wax has to be on Nudex, which is a notoriously like large exchange within the EOS ecosystem. So you're kind of getting that perception of, hey, now I'm somehow within the EOS ecosystem. I see all these different pairs of EOS and all these things. So on a day-to-day basis, if I'm there trading Wax, I see maybe I'm kind of exposed to the EOS ecosystem more. But certainly there's no, although again, I'm going back to it, like, it might be the only pair that I'm going to go on Nudex now so I don't say something stupid, but the only Nudex pair might be an EOS Wax pair. But if
Wax isn't on Binance or anything else?
All I know about Wax volume is that Nudex is seeing the most volume. So let me check real quick.
Also on Nudex, like, it'd be interesting to find out, are they paying fees for trading in EOS or what's the fees structure there? Because if the volume goes through, you know, Nudex and the fees are paid in EOS and they're, you know, trading Wax, then there's the link there, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So I'm not getting any feed, and this happens a lot because a lot of times, like CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, they don't follow decentralized exchanges. So there is a strong amount of volume on these centralized exchanges. Upbit, Bittrex, BitHum. So Upbit looks like it does 10 million 24-hour volume. I doubt Nudex is doing more than that, so I might be wrong there. But it does some volume. That's where I'm exposed to it. But yeah, I don't think there's any token economics that feeds back into EOS. So just we'll put that aside. The perception, I think, is important, and Wax is a great example of what you were talking about, Dimitri, where someone took the EOS.io tech. They're like, we want to do all the things that are right with the EOS.io and not kind of the things that have happened wrong. Maybe block.one took a couple missteps here or there. It's interesting, man. Wax hasn't been as negative as maybe some of the other sister chains. I think I'm trying Boss and specifically Talos has been like super negative at like coming at what's going on with block.one. So I kind of like what Wax is doing. Certainly they're doing a good job. Yeah, I mean, they've kind of run with this. I can't speak to the actual intentions of the team. So I don't know if they came into the EOS ecosystem. We're like, you know, we're seeing what we're seeing, and we need to make this, sister chain. Or did they come in previously knowing that they were going to spin up this chain anyway? So I can't speak to their intentions. We'll see what happens. But I think it is a fair argument to see like what exactly the benefit. We haven't seen any benefit up to this point. So that was a good discussion, guys. Appreciate you kind of coming in there.
Yeah, for sure. I've got the next story here. So this one is our Grayscale story. Everybody knows that Grayscale's buying a ton of Bitcoin. I think the thing that has been going around is that they're buying 150% of the new Bitcoin mined, right? So if you have, 10 Bitcoin mined over a certain amount of time, then Grayscale's buying 15 Bitcoin worth, which means, they're buying up new supply plus current supply. I think that would make a lot of sense for why we've seen Bitcoin not really fall as far as we have on some of the pullbacks. I think the lowest we got was like 8K on that one pullback a few weeks ago, and that was really only on one exchange. I think that was on BitMEX. So we haven't seen that kind of large pullback that's generally associated with such a large move upward. And maybe Grayscale is one of those reasons. Is it bullish for Bitcoin? Of course it's bullish for Bitcoin, right? The thing to remember with Grayscale, though, is that there's a very profitable ARB that a lot of these funds are doing, where there's, this premium that's associated with Grayscale, and they can go out and run this ARB, and after the year lockup is done, which I think the next timeframes are July and October for Grayscale, maybe August and October. Then essentially what you have is you have a ton of people selling their, on Grayscale, which pulls that premium down closer to, the price that you would see on the CME or elsewhere. So, it's one of those things that, to me, it's like, hey, it's great while it lasts, but as soon as it kind of turns the other way, it falls off pretty quickly. The story, though, is not about Bitcoin, and it's more about ETH. So, from a network perspective, Grayscale's actually bought more of Ethereum's total market cap in the past 5 months than they have of Bitcoin's. So, they've bought 0.2% of Bitcoin's market cap. They've bought double that of Ethereum's market cap in 0.4. Obviously, much smaller market cap. Maybe that has something to do with it, but it does go to show you that ETH is, has some pretty significant institutional, kind of love, right? Even if you throw the kind of ARB discussion away, you have to assume that there's some other folks in there that are just buying ETH for the exposure. They also offer Ethereum Trust, and I feel like they might offer Decentraland and a few others. Basically their largest investments are what they offer. So some pretty significant volume for ETH coming out of Grayscale. So, good to see if you're holding ETH there. Similar kind of story, right? We haven't seen a huge dump for ETH in the same way we haven't seen a huge dump for Bitcoin after both have exploded off the lows after March 12th. So, I think what was one of the questions, kind of thoughts on Grayscale in general? Was that what the comment was, Q?
I believe, yeah, I think it was just Bitcoin in general. Your opinion on Grayscale buying BTC big time. So that was more reflective of kind of what they were doing with BTC. But the fact that they made it to Ethereum is interesting, because what you see, like, do you see this kind of accumulating down the line? Like as maybe more market cap is like thrown, or more volume is thrown into these like quote unquote like altcoins, do you see Grayscale kind of moving down the line, or is it Ethereum where they're drawing the line a little bit?
Well, they go to Ethereum Classic. Grayscale's been a huge supporter of Ethereum Classic. So, I think it's primarily BTC, ETH, and Ethereum Classic that they're focusing on. I don't know, what sort of appetite they're going to have past that, because from a regulatory standpoint, it gets a little shadier, past BTC and ETH. So maybe they just focus on those. I haven't checked in on it in a while, so they might have other products. If you guys know that out there, correct us. If we're wrong there in the comments. But yeah, Grayscale is kind of like when you look at just on ramps and off ramps to crypto, I kind of throw them in the same basket as Square and the CME, right? So if you look at those three, Square and Grayscale have absolutely exploded relative to what they've done in the past. CME as well. CME is obviously much, much smaller than the amount of volume that Grayscale and Square are showing. But of the three, I think the most important is Square, because Square, is pretty straightforward. Like, hey, I'm putting cash into Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin. Right. So the more you see Square explode, I think the more you're going to see Bitcoin off the market, more permanently, right? Versus Grayscale or CME, where they're just kind of, in a lot of ways, trading it back and forth.
Got it. We got a ton of questions coming through, and they kind of relate to what's going on with this discussion. Ola Art saying, I have an Apple phone. I don't know how I have an Apple phone, but that we'll get to the more important comments here. Ola, you're going to have to tell me that later. It looks like Kieran saying 100. Are they 100x long? If they aren't 100x long, I don't want to speak to them. Renee is actually saying, so is the future of BTC becoming wrapped BTC. That's kind of more of like a DeFi approach. I think we also have a GPTC here, with GPTC being a trust. Do you guys have an idea how they reconcile the new amount they are buying their trust with the assets under management, so their per share value wouldn't be dropping? I'll throw that to you, Dimitri.
Yeah, that's that's the buddy that I brought in, in regards to the Grayscale topic. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be hard to explain, and I don't have the details of it, exactly how they reconcile, but just to build on the Grayscale story, really, at the end of the day, it's kind of, I see two major users of it. One is essentially you can have IRAs that can get into Grayscale, that gives the Grayscale gives the ability for IRAs to get exposure to Bitcoin, right? So, and that's the premium, that they can charge for it. And then the second one is basically just some of the traders that might want to have this temporarily volatility exposure. They might just hold it for just, get that exposure, get in and out, as that volatility kind of pays off for them. But at the end of the day, it's just like, the premiums that they charge, right? And like Mike mentioned, once the premiums start dropping off, and we see some of that selling, pressure translate into the spot market, that's really gonna leave, they can leave a lot of retail guys holding the bag, as the big boys are doing the arb, in the background, and they're juicing and using the premium basically, and taking advantage of it. So it's something just to keep in mind, even though, yes, there is a pretty big demand at the moment in terms of like Grayscale buying up BTC, but how long is that going to be sustainable, right? Knowing how the actual product is structured. So
yeah, people have thought that as it continues to grow, that premium will drop, and that's obviously what Grayscale says is the plan, right? Is like, oh well, the more people that come, the premium will drop, right? And that's kind of their excuse for the little scheme that they've devised, which has worked out really well for them. To answer the market pace, we're talking about GBTC specifically. This isn't any sort of side account, right? Grayscale is a part of Digital Currency Group, or vice versa. So Digital Currency Group has all sorts of different investments all over the ecosystem, right? And that's where kind of your Decentraland comes in, and some of these, where they're offering some sort of exposure there, or at least supporting the ecosystem. But yeah, we're talking about specifically GBTC. So, when somebody comes to Grayscale and buys, shares of GBTC, they have to go out and actually buy that Bitcoin, which is where the story comes from for BTC and ETH being bought up off the market. It's like from Joe King, saying Grayscale has Litecoin too. So Litecoin's thrown in there as well. They've got at least 4 of those different trust products.
Yeah, go ahead, Demon.
I was just gonna mention that, just like also the, them having a exposure or having ETH in there, it makes a ton of sense, especially with just how successful the stablecoin market has been, right? So stablecoins have blew up like crazy. So that's translating a lot into the success that ETH is having, and having that exposure on the Grayscale side, that makes sense to add that product there.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of comments, guys, and we appreciate you guys coming through with all of the different ideas and all the different topics that you want us to cover. I did have a kind of question that I wanted to get to you guys before we moved on to Bitcoin, although it kind of is related to Bitcoin. But what do you guys make of this chop that we've seen over the past, timeline-wise, it has to be weeks now at this point? What is the longest time we've ranged for this long in the past? I don't remember a time that we've just ranged for this amount of time, and I wonder what you guys make of this chop. Is this just a side product of more institutions being in the game?
I don't know. I mean, we can range from any price, really. We could range from 6 to 8K. We could range from 8 to 10K. We've definitely ranged longer than now. Maybe it feels like it's been so long because we had such a move up, and now we've kind of stalled out trying to break 10K. Volumes are dropping off. I think there's still on the institutional side, a lot of fear around Bitcoin and crypto and how it performs relative to, the rest of the economy. There still seems to be some sort of overhang that understands that this move up in the stock market doesn't necessarily mean that the economy's back to normal, right? And that everything we saw last year and this year is just, completely gone now. I think they understand that it's Fed first and people are kind of riding that wave. So, it just, when you're talking about 5K to 10K, we've seen those prices more than we've seen any other prices for crypto in the last 5 or 6 years. So it's a comfortable spot for people, but it becomes much more difficult for folks on the institutional side or the retail side to buy above 10K. That's kind of where you get into more of the FOMO land of things. And if we're just bouncing back and forth between above 10K and below 10K, capitulation gets quite a bit easier, right? If you bought Bitcoin at 10.5 and it's been bouncing around between 9 and 10.5 and then it dumps to 8, as a retail investor, maybe you're thinking like, hey, okay, well, the party's over. I'm going to dump here. And that's where you start to run into the longer dumps for Bitcoin and vice versa, right? So I think it's just it's a bit of some consolidation, understanding that volumes are starting to slow, especially on the retail side. Futures are picking up now. Folks are kind of pulling alpha out of the market, and it'll be really interesting to see where the next move goes, because the sentiment seems to be like, well, either we're going up or down, which means
50-50.
Yeah, 50-50, which means we're ready for some fireworks, because everybody's kind of, the chips are on the table and
spin the wheel.
Yeah, spin the wheel. Everybody's looking for the next move.
Yeah, we're kind of getting at it, and I don't want to spend too much time on this discussion piece because we do have the networks to get to. We do have a ton of comments that we need to get to as well, so a lot to get to. But I have this in the thumbnail, so I might as well ask it now. Due to this kind of chop that we've seen with Bitcoin, and it kind of maybe leading to maybe more alt gains over the past couple of weeks, are we close to altcoin season? Are we in it? Or are we close? What do you guys make of altcoin season? And do we see anything like that? Do you even buy into that kind of meme? Because Mike looks already pissed that we're even talking about it.
Yeah, well, I've talked about it on the desk, where we check the BTC dominance and alt market cap. So yeah, we've technically been in the alt season for some time, because obviously you see all the inflow of money kind of get into the alts, and that's the cycle that we usually go through. I've talked about it many times, where people getting out of fiat into BTC, out of BTC into alts, and out of alts into BTC, and way back. So, but it's been already some time. So really, kind of looking at that chart, it started like in early May. So, and I look back on like last 4 or 5 alt seasons that we had, and they typically last about a month and a half, which is kind of what we're coming up on, right? And it's crazy because I was talking about this time frame of a month and a half back in January when we had that alt season then, and it literally ended on February 14th. So it's like it was kind of month and a half time frame there.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually that cycle will continue to turn around, and if you missed kind of this cycle of alt season, I think you don't want to be chasing the last end of it, last tail of it, right? Even though it might be so enticing to kind of get in and try to grab some games, especially if you see on Twitter people like posting all their returns and stuff like that, right? But you might get in and then might find yourself holding the bags, as a lot of kind of people exit. But in regards to like BTC ranging, it's also at the same time, they have some minor capitulation that still might be occurring at the moment. We'll get into the next piece here for Bitcoin. We'll talk about the hash rate, but we still have headlines that come out saying, hey, some miners are selling more BTC that they're mining. So, and obviously kind of the way they're doing it, they're not going to be just market dump that whole thing on open market, right? They're just going to do it a sophisticated way where they have iceberg orders and so on, right? And a range for that is actually great, because they can just scale out of their positions in the range. You have a bunch of market makers just kind of holding it right before we start popping off. So that's kind of, I think, the idea behind of why we're seeing BTC in the range for quite some time, because there's some reshuffling there going on, and maybe if the miners, those that are capitulating, gonna slow down in terms of selling BTC, and Grayscale keeps up the demand and all the things that kind of stay the same, then maybe we'll pop off higher, but that's something we'll have to obviously see.
Gotcha. Yeah, Joe's in the chat saying the longer BTC remains a stable coin, the more likely retail will dump BTC to buy stocks, because stocks only go up. So that's an interesting theory as well. Guys, you guys are hitting us with a ton of comments, probably more so than we ever gotten, as well as the live concurrent viewers. I think we actually hit our all-time high, so we're kind of going up as well here. We're trending upwards. We hit 28, so that was the highest that we've ever gotten to. We're sitting at around 22, 23 right now, so we appreciate everybody in the channel, especially those that are leaving comments for us to discuss. We have so many comments, and I think there's like a little bit more to touch on, and I don't want to hit on everything, but I think it's important to talk about one of the comments that Renee had. So, is the future of BTC becoming wrapped BTC? And we saw kind of wrapped BTC on Ethereum kind of take off, which kind of put the Litecoin narrative on its head a little bit, when wrapped BTC actually beat the amount that was pooled in Litecoin, the Litecoin network. So I wonder what you guys make of this. And the only other thing I would talk on is the fact that I was trying to make a transaction on Ethereum the other day and kind of finalize a DAO admission that I was looking at. $25 for a transaction.
Oh, that's like a wire fee.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what happened, and I think this is a good time to bring up maybe the scaling solutions on other platforms. I think this is the time, if you see wrapped BTC getting more and more adoption, and because of the scalability and the amount of fees that's less than what you would see on Bitcoin itself, and then you have this kind of buildup of transaction volume on Ethereum that's forcing the transaction fees higher. Is this an opportunity for something on another network to kind of take over and say, hey, you could actually, I think Scott's brought it up a couple times, EOS has a BTC feature as well, where you can kind of wrap BTC on the EOS network, but there's a couple other networks that are doing all of the same things. Everyone's trying to get into this. Is this an opportunity when you see a wrapped BTC take over the Litecoin or a Lightning network, and then have its transaction fees kind of skyrocket over the past week?
I don't know. I get the concept of wrap BTC, right? Like, I think it's very, it's very much an Ethereum thing that some of these other networks have copied. And it's, very much like kind of your hardcore Ethereum folks saying like, oh, hey, we have better tech than Bitcoin, so how can we bring Bitcoin over to ETH? But like, if you're buying Bitcoin on Square, at what point are you going to be buying wrapped BTC? And if you're buying Bitcoin on Square or Coinbase, like, at what point are you going to learn or even understand the value of getting wrapped BTC versus BTC? So, maybe it's something that continues to grow within the small subset of crypto, of people who even know what this is, but it's not the future of Bitcoin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the thing to point out is that this is probably most used by the DeFi community. So you could say probably the same thing about the DeFi community, like how many people are going into Uniswap as a normal crypto user and taking advantage of all the advantages there, as well as like most of the DeFi apps in the space. So I think like the argument you made there was you could supplement wrapped BTC for DeFi. So I think, we'll see.
For sure. You want to hit on this hash rate stuff?
Yeah. Let's continue this Bitcoin talk here. If you guys haven't seen, the hash rate is kind of bouncing right now. We did experience, downward pressure on the hash rate post halving. But now that we had the difficulty adjustment dropped by over 9% on June 4th. Maybe perhaps some miners that were pushed out, maybe coming back, and are able to continue mining. So there's some good news there as far as the hash rate. It did rebound, and we'll see if that's essentially going to continue to happen because of the difficult adjustment that happened. So not a ton of things here, but if you look at the just the overall miners revenue, that hasn't really had a bump there, right? So even though the hash rate is kind of having some retracement to the upside, recovery, the overall revenue for miners hasn't really picked up. So kind of take that with the grain of salt, basically.
Yeah, it's hard to look into the various hash rate spikes and dumps or difficulty drops as anything super significant at this point.
I also talked to Karen yesterday on Trading Lounge. Talked about the hash rate quite a bit, and there's also other factors like, hey, there's better mining equipment that's becoming more available now in the market. More players are starting to get access to those things. The energy costs are going down. So there's many different factors kind of involved besides just the difficulty drop off that we had. So all those things might be aligned, can kind of do all those things. But he did share with me a link which kind of tells you an estimate and gives some predictions for the hash rate, which is pretty cool. We were talking about that. It has to do with just the kilowatts and the energy cost and so on, consumption.
Awesome. Yeah, we got some different comments relating to Bitcoin here in the chat. It looks like Scott was saying, yeah, that's PBTC, which is EOS's feature there. Metnix is saying need cross-chain atomic locks on Bitcoin assets. Looks like we're having... where's he going?
Team's getting the power source. Don't worry. Keep going.
Gotcha. Okay. Joe King actually pointed out here in the comment section what we were talking about earlier with Ethereum kind of being a scaling solution for Bitcoin. He said on June 6th, the total amount of fees spent on Ethereum network added up to $498,000 compared to Bitcoin's $308,000. The gap continued to widen the next day, totaling $540,000 and $258,000. So the amount of actual fees being spent on Ethereum is going through the roof, and I think a lot of the Ethereum community is taking note. Metnix is in here saying ETH needs ETH 2.0, or it's pretty much useless as a scaling solution of BTC. Transactions per second too low on proof of work. So all good points being made here. I think there's arguments to be made on both sides, but it's good to be talking about it here on Layer1Live. I'm interested in, what do you make of Metnick's comment there about needing cross-chain atomic locks on Bitcoin assets? That seems to be a little bit over my head. The interoperability in and of itself is kind of a rabbit hole that I'm not too far down, so I kind of have trouble talking fully about it and not acting like an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know on that front, to be honest. I don't know how much demand there is for that. So, it's like anything, right? Like we can get super deep down the tech rabbit hole with crypto, but we're not going to really see that unless there's giant demand for it. Gotcha.
All right. Well, we'll hit Ethereum now. I think that's pretty much all the comments that I did get to. I wanted to shout out Radster, man. I'm getting a lot of I guess flack for my Chelsea jersey here, but I think he was giving me some good ones. So I'm repping the old Samsung partnership that Chelsea used to have. I think it's Yokohama Tires now, but this is a original. I cannot tell you if I have an Apple or a Samsung phone, Olo, but that is a good guess. So appreciate
50-50.
Yeah, appreciate the comments here, guys. I do follow Chelsea. Did you ever pick a Premier League team, Mike? You were kind of on the fence here and there. But anyways, we'll hit Ethereum now.
Yeah, so really quick with ETH, news came out for OKX is rolling out options. So obviously options have been doing really well. They're trying to capture that market there. So OKX rolled out options on ETH. You can essentially trade that. They have an insurance fund dedicated towards that, which is 1,000 ETH. Really not much there, but I think they would need to increase that insurance fund a little bit more. But essentially they're getting in the game to compete with with other exchanges like Deribit. They've been kind of ruling the market of derivatives.
Right. Yeah, it's good to see ETH options coming out. I think the more that we see the options markets growing outside of Deribit is always good. OKX and Deribit are leading the way on that front. But other than that, you don't have much. CZ's got his 24-hour option set up, but otherwise,
I don't know about that.
It's just those.
Not a fan of those.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're sitting here at around an hour and 20 minutes. We did have a little bit of quicker hard stop today for the guys in the group here. So we're going to get done a little bit earlier. So we're going to fly through the rest of this. We've got one more point on Ethereum. We've got EOS, and then we're going to hit DeFi. 1-2 actually made a great point, though. He says, I think it's good that Bitcoin and Ethereum are not in a bull run yet until if retail investors start seeing the scalability issues, it will turn them off from crypto. So that's a fairly good point. If we're talking about transaction issues and transaction fee issues at this point, and we're saying that we're not in a bull run, and the average retail investor is not in, then what's going to happen when we do see that surge in retail users and there is a transaction issue? So that's a really good point. The last point we have on Ethereum here, Sandbox obviously had I believe 2 successful rounds for their land sales. They ran a third. They're kind of like grouping all of the rest of the sales into this moon sale, which is just, I guess they're just branding it and marketing it in that way. But they did run the first part of their moon sale, and it sold out in 5 minutes. And I believe, based on the link that I have here, it's basically like a blockchain analytics and kind of a block explorer, and it showed that when the sale went live on June 4th, 152 users spent about 208 ETH on that land sale. So it was about a 50K raise based on current prices. So it's good to see. I mean, you're just seeing more and more NFT projects start to have success, and Sandbox is certainly one of those. They're having success in their land sales up to this point, but they, I believe, have 4 more rounds of these land sales. Interesting personal point. They added land to what would have been, I guess, the ocean in a sense. So like Layer 1 actually had an estate that was right next to the roller coaster tycoon, and then ocean on the other side. So you're thinking here, I got myself right next to roller coaster tycoon. I'm looking out at the ocean. This is going to be prime real estate. And then they just added land to the end of that.
No way.
Where the ocean would have been. So I wish Sandbox would have shown that was going to happen. And maybe I wouldn't have got that specific piece of land, but it is what it is at this point. Thanks, Sebastian, for that. A couple quick news on EOS that has to do with voice and wax. It looks like EOS is, block.one and the voice team is looking to launch voice here in July, and this is going to be in their beta version. So July 4th, the beta version will be launched to the rest of the entire world. If you didn't know already, the voice beta is only in the US at this current moment, but you do have voice coming to the rest of the world on July 4th, Independence Day. I think they're really branding and marketing voice around being this kind of independence for social media users, right? They've already talked about kind of authentication for users, making sure there's no bots. So they're really playing this up as I guess the argument would be that they're really having a tough time, or the community is having a tough time figuring out how the voice team is branding this. Are you a Medium competitor? Are you a Twitter competitor? Are you, what are some other ones that we're looking at here? Are you a Facebook competitor? Yeah. So my sincere hope is that they just attack Twitter and just say, hey, look at all the problems that's going on with Twitter, and make a authentication platform that has real users and not all of the social and political garbage that's been coming out from not necessarily Jack, but just from the Twitter platform in general. We'll see. I mean, it's obviously a landmine field for any type of team running social media right now. So certainly Voice is going to have its own problems running a social media platform during these heated times. But if they can come out and be kind of a Twitter competitor without all the problems that you've seen with Twitter, I think that's going to have more adoption than trying to attack some type of medium form, type. I just feel like that's not the popular social media platform at this moment for just your average everyday user. So
That's fair.
Anything on that, fellas? Dimitri, you got anything?
Yeah, this funny comment from joking. When real Donald Trump on Voice, I was like, they should do an exclusive contract like they did with Ninja with like the streamers. They paid like millions of dollars, so it's like you only tweet on our platform. That would bring so many users.
That would actually be an amazing. BizDev needs to get on that stat.
Yeah.
That's a good comment. Appreciate that, Joe. The only other thing I have here is the Wax Advisory Council was announced. So basically, Wax over a period of, I believe, 12 weeks is going to be rolling out their advisors on this advisory council, and it's going to be a conglomerate of huge gaming, entertainment, and other relevant industries. These are all going to come in over the course of 12 weeks. It'll be interesting, man. Like, this is basically going to be a situation where each member is going to kind of, I guess, work with the Wax team to make sure that Wax's foray into video, into entertainment, and all the industries that I just talked about is going to be as smooth as possible. So we'll see what it is. It certainly is a strong narrative to be pushing. Wax bringing all of these big time, different companies that are from all of these different industries into crypto and blockchain. So good times for the Wax token holders recently. So we'll see how the advisory council plays into that going forward. But that's about it from the EOS ecosystem. They've been doing some good things, over the past couple months. So good to see.
For sure. Yeah, we're going to move on to DeFi here. So we added a new section on DeFi. That was a big response that we got. Obviously, DeFi is booming. Lots of interest in DeFi. So 2 stories here today on the DeFi front. I've got the first one. MakerDAO, obviously the most popular DeFi project, is considering accepting real-world assets as crypto loan collateral. They're really focusing on attacking the supply chain space, it seems. Talk a little bit about like musicians' future royalty payments, using that as a way to secure a DAI loan, DAI being the stablecoin on Maker. But it really seems that the article and Maker is focused on providing solutions for the supply chain space. So, just as some context, right? If you're a manufacturer, you obviously bring in all of these goods and you have to pay for those goods, and then you turn those goods into something else that you sell. Well, when bringing in those goods, you in many cases don't have to pay for them immediately. You have various terms. Sometimes it's 15-day terms, 30-day terms, 60-day terms. And what that allows you to do is, in an industry where margins are very low, you have some kind of leeway when it comes to cash flow. So that helps out these manufacturers, but it's bad for those who are providing those materials, right? Because if I give you something and you're not going to pay me for at least 30 days or 60 days, I'm not, I have the opposite problem, right? I have a cash flow problem. I'm not going to get those cash payments, as soon as I want. So, what you end up having is those, say, material suppliers say, hey, if you pay me within 7 days, I'll give you a 1% or a 2% discount. So they do things to try to incentivize that cash flow coming into their business much quicker. So on their side, they can kind of do the things they need. Manufacturer gets a discount, everybody's happy. But on either side, basically what you need is capital to win that game. So Maker's interested in attacking that, basically where they would use these supply chain invoices as collateral to lend out the DAI stablecoin. If you have an invoice where you're going to get paid by some party in 60 days, you can use that invoice as collateral to say, hey, when I get paid in 60 days, I'll repay this loan. The immediate concern is obviously that DAI has, not always been perfectly pegged to the dollar. So, if timing doesn't work out for some of these, real world companies, it's going to be very, very bad for them. If, I go to pay back the loan and now I owe way more because the DAI that I borrowed at $1 is now worth 95 cents or something, or vice versa. Now it's more. Now it's $1.05, something like this. So, there's kind of some obvious issues there. That's nothing outside of just the obvious, kind of confidence that DeFi is going to have to build over time. I think the larger issue with with DeFi, and you kind of see this in general with Maker adding USDC, and kind of this corporate inflow to DeFi as it becomes more and more popular, is that you're going to have centralized companies, even those like a Microsoft or an IBM, come in and say, hey, we're doing something with this brand new technology, and it's very revolutionary. We're using DeFi to give out these loans, but as the article talks about when interviewing some folks, is that it actually ends up costing more through the DeFi platform because there's so many different people taking fees, right? You're kind of overlaying a centralized entity with the brand that these companies trust, but then they're going to get paid for their work and for their time as well. And it's at the end of the day, it's from a cost standpoint might actually be cheaper for that party involved in the supply chain to go and get a loan elsewhere, that they would traditionally. So I think it's cool to see MakerDAO exploring other opportunities. I know they just jumped back up to about $1 billion in loans, which I think is a lot for crypto, but in the real world, obviously is not all that much. So, they're kind of exploring, seeing what else they can do, to kind of build out their book of products or services.
Yeah, and then the last piece of news that kind of relates to the stable coins is what I have in regards to Tether. There was a pretty cool interview that I still have to watch. It was with Whale Pool. They did an AMA with Bitfinex CTO, where they were trying to ask some questions, but basically like, well, why did Tether print like 5 billion USDT this year, and like what's going on with maybe BTC pouring out of Bitfinex, all those things. So it's interesting to see his answers. Well, he's saying because of what happened on March 14th, had liquidity crisis, they saw huge demand from exchanges to get Tether. Therefore, they were printing Tether, which makes sense because people are taking a step back, probably getting into Tether right out of their crypto, whatnot, right? So there was a huge influx in demand for Tether. Therefore, they continue to print that, and we've seen that with other stable coins as well. Some of them, came up. I think USDC did pretty well. So also he talks about interesting stuff in terms of banking. Now that Tether is growing, they work with banks. They had banking issues in the past, but also the fact that now where we are in terms of interest rates, something you mentioned before, where if we have negative interest rates and now Tether's sitting at 100 billion, then they're gonna have a problem with with storing that cash in banks because they're gonna have to pay to store that money there, right? So he addressed that. And in regards to BTC outflow from Bitfinex, he talked about how, BTC has been, kind of flowing out, but that's some just private OTC deals that have been done. But we've seen ETH flowing in.
Big time. Bitfinex is now the largest exchange, at least the largest exchange holder for ETH, if not one of the largest ETH holders, across the board. I mean, it's pretty, straight and down to the right for Bitcoin and straight and up to the right for ETH, which, makes sense based on Bitfinex history staking on other protocols like an EOS, and obviously what they're going to want to do to offer various products for, for ETH staking. Right? The more you have, the more you make kind of deal. So
this transition to ETH 2.0 is shaping up to be like one of the biggest moments in history. Like with ETH's rise over the past year, year and a half. I mean, it's been a mainstay in crypto for a long time, but just everything that's going on with institutions and with I guess usage from DeFi and everything that's kind of building up to this moment of like, holy shit, we're about to flip the switch and see what happens. So it'll be interesting definitely to see what happens with ETH 2.0. This has been a great episode, guys. I know we have to run here, so the last thing I want to do before we get off is kind of run that randomizer. I have it up on the screen now, and we're going to run this randomizer. There was 11 people total that are going to benefit from the $25 BTC giveaway. So I'm going to do this number generator, and then I'm going to match that up with the June poll. So 1, 2, 3, looks like 7 was the number. It looks like Milkrow is the guy that's going to win the BTC $25 giveaway based on those community polls. So congratulations to Milk Row. Yeah, a little bit of claps going on. But that was a great episode. We had a ton of comments. I'm sorry we couldn't get to every single comment. You guys just blew it up today. So we appreciate everybody kind of following along and doing that with us. We do these every Monday at 1 p.m. If you want to join our community, you can possibly, get in by going to t.me/Sutler Ventures right now. We're going to change that over the next couple weeks. Actually, this week that will likely change. But for right now, you can go to t.me/Sutler Ventures. You can DM an admin once you're in there, and you can get an invite to the private community. But again, great episode here, guys. Do you guys have anything before we hop off?
Yeah, I'm going to send you my wallet information so you can send me that $25 in BTC.
I need authentic users. I need to talk to the voice team, man.
Yeah, not true for those out there wondering. It's not Steve. Don't worry. Don't freak out or anything. But yeah, another great episode. Some good stories here. As always, we will see you guys next week. Don't forget Dimitri's desk
tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Boom.
Be there, be square. Yeah. All right, guys. Later. Bang.